Welcome, everyone. Happy Friday. My name is Peter No, Senior Presidential Director here with LifeWave. I would love to welcome everyone on this very, very special Friday of an interview with our own inventor, CEO, David Schmidt, and our beautiful, beautiful Jane Mann, who is our special esthetician for over 20 years. And before we get started, I'd like to actually introduce David. And what everyone will hear for the next 45 minutes to an hour is literally the technology of what LifeWave will do to the beauty industry. And I'll stop from here and I'll leave it back to Jane. So let me introduce David Schmidt. David is the inventor of LifeWave technology and the founder and CEO of LifeWave. David's experience in business and product development spans over 30 years of formal education in the management information systems and biology at Pace University. Born out of the 3 years of intense research by David into the concept of being able to naturally increase energy and stamina through elevating fat burning and using wireless communications to the human body via phototherapy. So in the last 15 years, David has committed his life to making this opportunity a reality. And globally, David is the holder of 94 issued patents. And more than 70 of those patents are in the field of regenerative science and technology. And that has led David to realizing that phototherapy can be the means by which a person's own stem cells can be activated into a more youthful state. And that has caught the attention of Jane Mann, who has been in the beauty skincare industry for over 20 years. And she owns her own clinic in Las Vegas. And I had the pleasure of meeting her just a few months ago. But because I come from the beauty industry also, we just literally clicked it off and we see the future of where LifeWave is going. So without further ado, let me bring on Jane Mann. Jane, how are you doing today?
Well, thank you very much. It's so nice to be here. I'm really excited to bring LightWave and the idea of LightWave into the beauty industry. And the way that I'm hoping to do that today is through presenting questions to David from a skin therapist's point of perspective. I know a lot of people on this call have worked for the company of LightWave for quite a while, and it's been a real interest to you. Just how do you attract or get into the mind of a skin therapist, esthetician, dermatologist, even a plastic surgeon? And there are several buzzwords that will really kind of wake up somebody's interest and pique their interest. And that is going to be mentioning things like oxidative stress, lipid peroxidation, and the obvious mitochondrial damage. So when Patrick brought this to me, I had literally just had a treatment done called a neogen plasma resurfacing. And this is done with a gas. And you really have to prepare, because while this is an anti-aging treatment, there's a significant chance I could age myself even more. And Patrick came at the right time, and he brought the patch, the X39. And as we all know, or most of us know, the X39 is a copper peptide. And a copper peptide is a huge kind of ingredient in the anti-aging mixture for the best results in creating new collagen and elastin and better looking skin. So that's how I got super excited, because I healed incredibly well from what could have been a disaster. And I started to play around and get interested using the other patches. So thank you, Peter, for setting up this opportunity for me to interview David. David, are you there? I can't see you.
Oh, hey, Jane, I'm right over here.
How are you?
Hey, nice to see you again. How you been?
Oh, I'm wonderful.
Wonderful.
I encourage anybody that I've invited from the skincare industry to grab a piece of paper and a pen, because David is going to talk on so many buzzwords. You are going to be wanting to Google everything when you get off the phone. And I feel that today's skincare therapist needs to know so much more than just the topicals we put on the skin. So what I kind of wanted to do is just hear from your perspective, kind of the first signs of aging and how you feel, not only the X39, but the Eon, glutathione, and in between, I wanted to interject common treatments that we do in our clinics, and then maybe how you would see best fit to prepare the cell to produce the best results.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. I appreciate that. Well, I suppose the place we should start is at the beginning, and perhaps, we can even look at this as we're entering into, or we're somewhat through the generation when we're going to be looking at skin and skincare other than just simply the application of topicals, and look at this in a more holistic manner, meaning that the health, the appearance, the vitality of the skin is going to be intimately connected to everything else that we're doing. And I know that you're a fan of this. So I think we're going to really have a lot of fun with the conversation today. So just like we would have with any other part of our health, with skincare, we really need to build up our foundation. And I spoke a little bit about this last night. And Jane, I know that you talk to your clients about this, but if we want to have healthy skin, we have to have a healthy body. So this means we need to have a clean diet. We need to supplement where needed. We need to exercise, drink plenty of water, of course, get proper sleep, avoid things like alcohol, excessive amounts of coffee, and other things, avoid drug use if possible. All of these things are going to have an impact on the health and the vitality of the skin. So first thing I would recommend before even looking at patches is take a look at everything in your life and try to build as strong of a foundation as possible. So that being said, let's take a look at maybe where things can start to go wrong. And where we would look first would be in the mitochondria. So a very simple way to talk and think about skincare is going to be based on the idea that every cell in the body, and the skin included, is going to be dependent upon the ability of the cells to make energy and the ability of the cells to communicate with their environment. And if we lose either of those two things, the body begins to die. And you have all types of health disorders that result as a consequence. So the first thing is, let's make sure that the cells are producing adequate amounts of energy. If the cell produces enough energy, then we're going to be able to synthesize new proteins and repair damaged tissue so we can protect the collagen. And as we know, collagen is the most abundant protein in the body. But the ability of the cells to manufacture collagen is going to be directly related to the ability of the cells to manufacture energy, and this is done in the mitochondria. So that there's perhaps a few things that we could talk about from a nutritional point of view and from the perspective of patches that will facilitate an increased output of energy in the mitochondria. Secondly, we need to protect the skin. And this is where we're going to maybe spend some time talking about glutathione, carnosine, and Eon. Because if we can manage oxidative stress and inflammatory stress, we're going to be able to protect every cell in the body, including the skin. And then when we look at maybe some advanced things like stem cell activation, of course, this becomes very important, especially if we have any type of scarring, any detrimental damage to the skin. The ability to manage inflammation and then rebuild the skin with new and healthy stem cells is going to be very critical. So that's kind of like a sweeping overview, and we can dive into any one of those areas that you like.
Well, I love that. I think one of the first places we should start is probably, from birth till 20, people don't really realize they're aging. They don't understand that the oxidative stress starts from the UV damage on the exterior of the skin. And then, kids are crazy. They don't have good diets. They don't drink enough water. They're not getting the omega-3s they need. And we start to see a little bit of damage around that cell membrane. And I see it personally on skin with skin barrier issues, maybe a diffused redness, just a basic inflammation. And then if they're carriers of acne or any type of inflammatory issue, such as rosacea, melasma, anything like that, then the first thing I do is typically get them onto a fish oil or an omega-3. And I really don't do any type of exfoliant type harsh chemicals. But when we were talking the last time, I loved your thought about adding Eon. I mean, obviously Aloe Vita, we now, after teaching that class, which was amazing, all of my teens, I put on Aloe Vita first. What would you suggest to do something for just the diffused redness? And diffused redness, I saw broken capillaries pop up in the chat. For those of you, it's not really a broken capillary. It's just that the skin is so thin, it's exposing the capillaries. And so this can be a UV damage. This can be something that you've inherited or genetic. But what are your thoughts on that, David?
So if we're just going to focus on skincare, maybe a good way to look at this is that this would be a commitment to a program that would last a number of months, and that we're not trying to just get simple cosmetic benefits. We're looking at improving the overall health of the skin and the health of the body so that there can be long-term benefits. So let's look at this maybe in stages and then over a period of a number of months. So a first step that I think would be very useful is detoxification. Now, detoxification is an umbrella term, and there's actually a surprising number of detox programs that are available that I think most people aren't really aware of. When we think about detox in our community, we think about glutathione, but it actually runs quite a bit deeper than that. So for example, when you're elevating glutathione, it's a chelating agent, and it's going to attach to heavy metals in the body like mercury and help facilitate the removal of those heavy metals. This is really important. Not only can it improve the appearance of the skin, but it's also going to make the liver work better. It'll make the thyroid work better if there's any accumulated mercury in the thyroid, make your immune system work better by removing mercury and heavy metals from the thymus gland. So detoxification with glutathione would be a very important first step. And this could be something that I would say would be a minimum of 2 weeks when you're starting, but you could certainly do it for 30 days. Other forms of detoxification would involve removing plastics from the body. I know this is kind of gross to think about. Oh, gee, we're drinking water sometimes from plastic bottles, and those plastics can accumulate in the body. It's good to go on detox to remove those. And we do that with oxygen therapies, oxygen radicals like hydrogen peroxide and ozone. There's parasites that can be in the body. And if you're a sushi lover like I am, it's certainly possible that you could get a parasite from eating raw fish. So it's a good idea to go through a parasite cleanse maybe once a year, and you can do this for, let's say, 30 days with some common herbs. There's a liver cleanse that you can do, and also removal of any gallstones or bile when it accumulates into the liver and forms soft pellets, which would be a precursor to gallstones. You can go through a 3-day flush that will remove thousands, maybe 1 or 2 thousands of these little pellets from the body. And this is going to help the liver work better. And that is actually going to ultimately improve the appearance of the skin, because we're improving the detoxification pathways. And the liver is principally going to be where most of the glutathione is in the body. And of course, the liver is a filter. So we get the filtration mechanism working, and the skin is going to be a lot healthier. So detoxification for the first month would be really important. And secondly, another part to this would be getting inflammation and oxidative stress under control. We're actually starting a new study, and it's going to involve the use of the Eon patch, in which we're looking at an entirely new technique for reducing not only inflammatory stress, but oxidative stress as well. So, first keep in mind that oxidative stress and inflammatory stress are necessary. They're part of the healing process. And when we're injured, the oxidative chemicals that are released at the site of the injury are going to suppress the formation of bacteria that can create infection. It's if those oxidative chemicals are chronic and they hang around a lot longer than they should, then they start to damage healthy tissue. The same thing is true with inflammatory stress. Inflammation is necessary to tear down old, damaged, or dead tissue, but as we age, our ability to remove those inflammatory chemicals begins to decline. So a product like Eon is a really excellent method for getting the inflammation under control. And this is going to ultimately help to protect the skin from damage. I should mention that Alavita we find is an excellent method for reducing oxidative stress and ultimately protecting the skin. So I would say, just long story short, in the world of patches, Eon and Alavita and glutathione are going to help facilitate detoxification, clean up the body, and protect the body from inflammatory and oxidative stress. There's a lot of other steps here in the foundation, but in the patch world, that's what I'd recommend.
I love that. And I think that, anyone in our industry recognizes that up until really being introduced to the patches, it was very difficult to address oxidative stress as one of the leading causes of aging and kind of disrupting the integrity of the cell and the cell membrane. Ultimately, it does kind of go to the mitochondrial damage, and something that I think a lot of people need to be aware of is, once you hit about 50, the chances that your cell is impaired enough to start incurring damage to the mitochondria is at about a 90%. And so the first thing that person does is come into a clinic and she says, what can I do? I have wrinkles, what can I do? A lot of times they don't want to be patient to go back to step one, to start with the glutathione, to start with, and we'll kind of hit carnosine in a little bit and its role. But for those of you that are selling this to skincare therapists, or you are a skincare therapist, it's a major stepping stone into the best skin possible. Because if you go right into an ablative or a wound healing type technology and you don't have the right cellular capacity, you're actually aging yourself if you're a do-it-yourselfer, or you're aging your client if you're a clinician. I want you to hit though real quick, David, because when we talked earlier a couple of weeks back, you gave a great study, and I know I have a couple acne professionals on this call. And would you please quote the study about glutathione over a month usage and the statistics of repair and healing? And
okay, so you're referring to the acne study that we did.
mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, I'll be happy to cover that, but there's an asterisk next to this so we can stay out of trouble with the FDA and the FTC. We did this study with a clinical lab in New Jersey, and this is going back to maybe around 2008 now. And we started to get reports from people that were using the glutathione patch and having remarkable reductions in acne. So we thought we would study this clinically. And what we found was that in using the glutathione patch there was a 68% reduction in the appearance of acne in 2 weeks. We were in the mid 80% of reduction in acne in 3 weeks and over 90% reduction in acne after 4 weeks. Now, acne is, of course, a medical condition. And when we went to speak with our attorney about this, they said, well, you're going to have a problem with the FDA and the FTC. First, you'll have to get your patch regulated as a drug because the FDA is only going to recognize a drug as treating a medical condition like acne. And then you're going to have a problem with the FTC on making these types of claims. So we decided not to market the glutathione patch that way, despite the fact that, you know, there's a massive need for this. But the fact of the matter is we did show the correlation between elevated levels of glutathione and in skin health and acne. By the way, just to do a plug, I have a product training coming up on December 16th, where I'm going to discuss the role that glutathione plays in stem cells. There's a very interesting and surprising connection between stem cells and glutathione. So I'm going to be presenting that information on our product training on December 16th. But in any case, yeah, I would say there's a number of natural treatments for acne, depending on what type of nutrients people are ingesting, foods or supplements that are rich in vitamin A, vitamin D, zinc, can all be incredibly important in helping to reduce acne. And then, of course, using glutathione for its benefits in detoxification and also as a antibacterial.
Last night, I'm trying to see the doctor that interviewed you, that you kind of were talking with. He brought up a really big component that I see a lot in inflammatory skin conditions, and that's leaky gut. Which patches were you talking about that were really good to work with the leaky gut? Because I'd have to say that's one of the biggest leading causes we see today.
Sure. So the first thing, again, you know, this all comes back to building the foundation of the body and getting the diet in check and exercise and so forth. So we'll just say that that would be a given. What we did find in our research is that X39 does have a rather remarkable effect on the gut. We do see that copper peptide, because of its ability to act as a gene modulator, it will help reset the immune system and get the immune system to be more active and be more responsive in the body. That might be a fair way to say it. So as a result, we see improvement in the thymus and improvement in the gut. And that's not surprising because this is where the immune cells are going to be made. So first thing is I might recommend use of the X39 patch. I would also recommend use of glutathione because it's neuroprotective, it's detoxifying, and when someone has leaky gut, it can cause infiltration of toxins into the blood. So drinking lots of water, using oxygen therapies, elevating glutathione can all help to facilitate detoxification of these things. So that would be among many other things. I would also recommend orally aloe vera, and there's some aloe vera extracts that can be beneficial in helping to facilitate removal of toxins from the intestine and helping to normalize the activity of the gut. Okay,
I love that. Okay, so I have one, I'm going to just kind of give you a little testimonial, and then two, I'm going to ask you a quick question. So we had talked, and then primarily, as I mentioned, I have a lot of highly sensitive skin conditions. So, and teenage boys, and those of you that have teenage boys know just getting them to wash their face is a feat. And so, and athletes, they're sweating all the time. So now I've got everything going against me, and a mother who wants her son's skin clear tomorrow. And so I put him on the X39 and glutathione. And then the mom calls me and she's like, I need more of those things. I go, what? She goes, I need more of those patches. And I said, oh, is it working? And she goes, yeah, he'll do it. And so he came in yesterday and I just could kick myself because his skin was so irritated. He was a football player from, you know, just his skin was just rubbing in that mask, and he works out, and he's a sweater, and it really made so much sense. So those of you that do work in the skincare industry, no medical claims whatsoever, but you really need to think about your training and common sense. Glutathione being a master antioxidant, antibacterial, autoimmune, and then adding something like a copper peptide for healing, and that it's you know, that ingredient can somehow regulate the gut activity and promote some type of healing. With that being said, would you recommend the X39 for people with just basic digestive issues or intestinal issues or people with sensitive stomachs?
I would. I might also recommend the Eon patch and applying that over the ileocecal valve. So this would be, if you go, let's say, this is an easy point to find. If you go from the belly button and you kind of go on a diagonal line, 45-degree angle from the belly button towards the waistline, and you go about 2 to 3 inches, there's going to be a point there. If you apply some deep pressure, there's going to be a point that people get to that can be very sensitive, and that's the ileocecal valve. And if you were to apply either the glutathione patch or the Eon patch over at that point, it would typically be used for something like acid reflux. That valve can shut close, force acid back up the body, and now we get acid reflux. So that point, and also acupuncture point, stomach 36, is always associated with acid reflux. But from the point of view of the gut and any type of associated inflammation, that would really be an excellent point to apply one of the patches to. So you could apply X39 behind the neck and then Eon or glutathione to that point.
Oh, I love that. We're already at like, I only have like so much time with you. So I have like a ton more, and we're going to just brush through it really quick. I wanted to hit treatments that people get in clinics. So somebody comes in and kind of at a preliminary level, I will offer microcurrent. We sometimes do peels. We both kind of talked a little bit about the body electric. So I am dying to know, you know, microcurrent, I believe, works. I love what it does. And as far as charging ATP, and like, what do you think is beneficial combining just patch wise? I mean, aside from different things, but just basic skin treatments. Somebody's going in to get a facial and an esthetician really wants to get her on the right path, you know, so we want a good cellular turnover. Would you just say the X39 is one of the best patches to start with, or is there something else you would include with that?
Well, many of our products are going to have benefits for the skin, but through different pathways. So if someone, and this of course is all going to come down to budget, and people are certainly free to try and rotate between the different patches and see what works best for them. So the example that we're using, first they could start with Eon and glutathione, or glutathione and Olivita during the first month, get that detox, protect the cells from damage, and then move on to something like X39. So that would certainly be a possibility. Carnosine is also an interesting possibility. A little background on carnosine is that it's the most powerful natural anti-glycation nutrient that has been discovered. And I often like to refer to carnosine as the most valuable nutrient that most people aren't taking. Athletes, of course, they know about it today because beta-alanine supplements and carnosine supplements have become more widely used in pre-workout and post-workout formulas. But I first started to become interested in carnosine back in 2005 and 2006 when I saw research studies coming out that when you give mammals, and in these experiments they were mice and rats, a daily supplement of carnosine, that their lifespan was increasing 30 to 40%. And that's all they were doing. Now, the really cool thing about this, I mean, you know, I wouldn't mind living to 130 or 140. You know, that's not a bad starting point. We were talking about much longer lifespans last night. But the really cool thing about that is that the mice did not age until the very end of their life. So carnosine has this incredible property of basically keeping you young throughout most of your life. So, you know, what's going on there? Well, there's multiple mechanisms. But let's talk about anti-glycation as it relates to the skin. So first, so everyone knows what we're talking about, glycation is a process in which sugar is going to bind with proteins. And this is going to, especially people that have type 1 or type 2 diabetes, are going to be especially prone to glycation because of the elevated blood sugar levels. There's many reasons to get your blood sugar under control. Diabetes is only one of them, but high blood sugar levels are also going to degrade the quality of the skin, and they leave people prone to diabetic or idiopathic neuropathy, which will destroy the peripheral nerves and in some cases even lead to amputation. So again, going back to diet and exercise, those are excellent methods for getting blood sugar under control. But there, nutritionally speaking, there are many ways to control blood sugar. And we see that with copper peptide, with glutathione and carnosine, they all facilitate control over blood sugar, and in some cases in very, very dramatic ways. I would say that I used to think the combination of glutathione and carnosine was remarkable at controlling blood sugar, but then when we introduced X39, it just so dramatically passed what we were seeing with the combination of glutathione and carnosine. But getting back to carnosine just for a moment, it's one of its methods of action is that it does act like an antioxidant, but it's unusual in that it can protect the telomeres from shortening. And this is how it increases longevity. But telomere shortening is also linked to inflammatory disease and autoimmune disorders. So by protecting the telomeres, you can protect the body from inflammation and from autoimmune disorders. I'm not going to make a medical claim, though, of course. But with respect to glycation, when somebody has high blood sugar levels and it can bind to a protein and form glycation, this can result in oxidative and inflammatory stress, and as a result, damage the skin. So by utilizing carnosine, we can reduce the occurrence and protect the skin from damage. So carnosine is, depending on a person's overall health, that might be something that someone would want to consider. Plus, they get all the extra benefits of improved cognitive function, improved heart function, and improved strength and stamina.
You know, glycation is something we see tremendously in the clinic. And for those of you that kind of want a visual of what glycation is, it's a hardening of the skin, and it's kind of like a permanent hardening. And you would look at the person and you think, do you use lotion? Can I put lotion on you? And it's just nothing seems to penetrate it. So I call it the creme brulee. And it's really tricky because once a client is in that cycle, you cannot do anything to exacerbate cellular proliferation or turnover, because we'll exacerbate the problem. We won't heal it. And a common problem of new skincare therapists is they like to go in and peel this. And so basically what David's saying is a great way to kind of remedy this over time would be to start to use something that would monitor the blood sugar levels. And a great way is through the patches. As we get older, I want you to discuss heat shock. And I know that I did get a little note that maybe this is more advanced, but some of the estheticians on here are very familiar with heat shock. It's that double-edged sword. We want to use a thermal heat to create a thermal injury to create collagen and elastin, but if the cells aren't in optimal condition, then what we're actually doing is creating a scenario that we're eating up the collagen and elastin. And would you suggest the X39 for that? Is that the copper peptide? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I certainly have quite a few thoughts about that. First of all, temperature in biology is a really interesting thing. There are things called heat shock proteins, and there are even heat shock antioxidants, and they're incredibly powerful. So berberine, for example, is a very powerful anti-aging nutrient that is created in nature through heat shock and heat stress. Another one would be astaxanthin. Astaxanthin is as valuable as gold. It's extremely expensive to manufacture. It's produced in algae, and it's made by heat shocking algae. So the algae will release astaxanthin to protect the algae from damage, and this antioxidant has incredible abilities at protecting cells, and human beings can benefit from this. In human biology, of course, we see effects by heating and cooling the body. I was once at Olympic training camp in France. It was an organization called INSEP, and they have a chamber there. And Peter, I'm going to sign you up for this. You go in this chamber, you get in your underwear, you go in at 70 degrees below zero, and you have to do that for about 2 or 3 minutes. So I know you'd be really excited about that. But the benefit is that you get very, very rapid increases in testosterone, and the athletes use this as a natural way to recover. So this is just all to say that the human body will in fact respond to extremes in temperature, both hot and cold, and so we need to know how to use this appropriately. So there's a number of ways to facilitate increases in production of collagen and elastin. Elastin, of course, is a little bit trickier. Some people are concerned that if an individual has cancer, prompting the cell to increase elastin can be dangerous. There's some literature that might suggest that elevating elastin production could lead to proliferation of cancer cells. I don't think it's quite that simple. Depends on a number of other factors. But in the area of collagen, first of all, it is very well established that there's an intimate role and relationship between copper peptide and the fibroblasts. So interestingly enough, copper peptide protects the fibroblasts from damage and will help to normalize collagen production. And the most dramatic examples of this we see in the testimonials we receive, where people have gotten burned. They have very, very deep wounds from things like car accidents and other accidents, long-term scars, and these injuries heal. And this is because X39 and copper peptide are able to upregulate the production of collagen from the fibroblasts. Now, we of course also need to have the raw materials in our body, and so things like collagen supplements are gonna have their value. I definitely recommend vitamin C and any number of ways of getting that, either through IV, let's say once a week, or just simple oral vitamin C, 1,000 milligrams once or twice a day can be okay. But vitamin C is going to play a role in regenerating and restoring collagen in the body. There are any number of other nutrients, milk peptides, for example. Whey protein plays a role in increasing collagen production in the body. So that in and of itself is a pretty fair and large topic. But yes, for the purpose of our conversation, X39 would be the go-to patch for increasing collagen production and protecting the fibroblasts from thermal shock.
All right, so that's kind of what I was thinking before. People either go get radio frequency, microneedling with radio frequency, even your CO2 lasers and your neogen gas any type of treatments like that, you really need to make sure that your client, besides being healthy and everything else that we've mentioned, is on the copper peptide or the X39, just for the best results. What I'd like to do before we kind of wrap it up is I'd like to discuss a little bit more about not so much autoimmune issues, but people just with high inflammatory markers. I see that on intake sheets more and more commonly. And do you feel that the X39 is a great go-to to start them off on, or would you think, going back to the glutathione is just a master antioxidant?
So I'm actually going to recommend the Eon patch because it is a broad spectrum anti-inflammatory. We actually did a study. I'll share the results with you. We haven't published them because the research is ongoing, but we did a 6-month study of our patches, and I can't tell you which. I might be able to tell you which, but I can't tell you what we were studying because that's secret right at the moment. But we did this 6-month study prior to the pandemic, and we got spectacular results. And I think it's fair to say this was in the field of anti-aging. We went back and did the same study with a larger group, but the study started after the pandemic. And you could see it was just like flipping a switch. After the pandemic, the results were not as good. There was a drastic difference, as a matter of fact, between pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. And when we had exit interviews and we talked to people, we found out that people were under tremendous emotional stress because of the pandemic. And this altered the results and it altered the outcome. Now, we were, in this particular case, we were studying, we weren't studying the Eon patch, we were studying another patch. And we were looking at a very specific structure within the cell. And we wanted to see that if we could normalize the function of this structure within the cell. And we found out pre-pandemic we could, post-pandemic we could not. And it all came down to elevated levels of oxidative and inflammatory stress. So this is just to say that any number of different factors in a person's life can affect their overall health, especially emotional stresses. And with people being concerned about what's happening with COVID, people being under a lot of financial stress, this in turn is going to create this inflammatory stress. So a really good way to deal with that would be with the Eon patch, amongst other things.
When you talk about the oxidative stress, would you match the Eon with the Alavita then?
I would. In the patching world, that's what I would do. I will say that nutritionally, it is extremely difficult to reduce oxidative stress. We're currently in a clinical study. We haven't started it yet. We're just going to contract, but we are going to be using the Eon patch and something else in combination as a way to reduce oxidative and inflammatory stress. And the initial projections based on pilot work show that this technique will reduce oxidative stress by an incredible 80%. And that gets oxidative stress into a normal range. We need some oxidative stress. We don't want to eliminate all of it, but we want to reduce the oxidative stress that's associated with aging. So I'm hoping maybe about a year from now, we could release that data and release a product as a result.
When we throw around that word, and I'm getting texts left and right, I'm going to give my idea of oxidative stress, and you correct me if it's wrong.
All right.
So when I think about oxidative stress, I think of kind of like, when we see a picture of a fresh cell, like a new cell, right? And it's buoyant and looks like a baby pink balloon and it bounces around. But the oxidative stress is kind of when that helium goes out of that balloon and the balloon kind of hardens by the sunlight. And so when David and I are talking about the importance of this, it's that when the cell divides and goes into what's called mitosis, it doesn't just birth out a buoyant pink baby balloon. It's mirroring what its replicate, what its mother cell is. And so this is the decline of the skin. This is the decline of your health, because we're only as healthy as our cells are. And so when we talk about just talking about aloe vera is one of the only ways to address oxidative stress. And this is something that's even more important for clients or people on this call over 50, because over 50, now your ability to absorb nutrients due to whatever conditions, such as pre-inflammatory conditions or digestive issues, these patches are truly a way to get the body to create what we need it to do and relate it to the cells in the way that the body is used to talking to the cells. So we're not supplementing the body with anything other than how the body produces it. And I think that's really exciting about what you've created here, and where it's going to play a major role in the future of skincare and with skin therapists.
Yeah, you know, another way to think of this, and I'm going to give people a little bit of hope here, and that is one of the things that clinical studies show is that this is not going to sound like a good thing, but bear with me just a second, is that when we have elevated levels of oxidative stress and inflammation, it can lead to breaks in the DNA. And that, of course, is not a good thing. We don't want to create mutations and DNA damage, and we don't want to create damage to our genome. But the really exciting thing is that if we keep our body's levels of glutathione elevated, it will actually repair DNA before the cell goes through cell division. So this means that, you know, we can have some stressful moments in our life. We're all going to go through, you know, long days, having emotional stress, all these kind of things that can occur. But if we're paying attention and we are in a regular regimen with our health protocols, we're keeping our glutathione elevated, we're managing our inflammatory stress, it's going to help protect ourselves in some pretty dramatic ways.
I was reading in Lauren Pickert's book last night about copper peptide and LED, and it said those people that have higher levels of copper peptide in their system actually respond better to the 639, I think it was like I can't remember the exact nanometer of the infrared and red. Can you explain that a little bit? Because I know a lot of people do the LED beds, or they do LED lights.
Sure. Well, I mean, this happens to be, you know, one of my primary areas of study, so I hope I can address it okay. Yeah, so some of the wavelengths of light that we look at in our research are going to be 630 nanometer, 660 nanometer, 780 nanometer, down more towards the infrared. I think it's fair to say that in light therapy, those wavelengths in red, orange band, and infrared band are very, very well studied. But as we get into green wavelengths and blue wavelengths, there's less good data, and that's for a variety of reasons. Of course, infrared is going to penetrate a little bit better through the cell. But the connection really here is that infrared and 630 and 660 are going to have direct actions on the mitochondria. And we have to look at the electron transport chain and increases in cytochrome C oxidase, which is going to be the enzyme which is elevated during light therapy. So copper peptide's role in light therapy is rather interesting for a number of reasons, but I think suffice it to say that ultimately Lauren Pickart, I have been in communication with him, and he's a brilliant scientist. He deserves a Nobel Prize. Ultimately, what it comes down to is copper peptide's ability to modulate the genes, reset those genes to a younger state. And now everything in the body works well. When we're born, when we're young and healthy, let's say from 25 under, before the aging process really starts, our bodies can interface with light in a perfect manner. It's no mistake that when people go out in the sun, they feel more energetic, emotionally, they're in a better mood. This is not purely psychological, it's physiological. I had once had a conversation with Dr. Carl Merritt, who's a very well-known biomedical engineer, and he had said that in his experiments, they recorded that as much as 30% of the energy being manufactured in the mitochondria was coming directly from sunlight. So in people that live in places like Seattle, where they're not getting very much sunlight, that there is a direct reason as far as why they feel less energetic, and you find a coffee shop on every corner. It's because literally they don't have an ample supply of light to produce electrons in the cell and generate more energy. So yeah, this is all to say that if we elevate our copper peptide levels, the cells will begin to look, feel, act like younger, healthier cells. And this will facilitate the transfer of energy from light through the electron transport chain and ultimately increase total energy output in the mitochondria.
So we are running out of time, and I kind of want to recap because there are some people new to the light wave technologies. And I kind of want to hit first on, will you explain, people, they are familiar with LED. We're familiar, many people are familiar with infrared, and many people are familiar with the light, the basically we are photons. So we place these patches and where they're recommended, and those do come in each of the envelopes that you have kind of recommended places to patch. I know that a lot of people want to understand. And so when we activate a peptide or we're activating an antioxidant, how is that patch doing that? And how is it just kind of the network of the body's infrared system? How would you I know it's far more complicated than what you could spit out in a layman's version, but how would you best explain that to the people that are new on this webinar?
Okay, so here might be an easy way to think about this. If we were to take a laser, and it doesn't matter what the wavelength is, let's just say 660 nanometer, right? We're going to get orange light off of that. You can think of this as just being a sine wave. And if we could hear that wave, it would be something like a hum. Now you compare that to a musical instrument. So a trumpet has a very distinct sound, a flute has a very distinct sound, and a piano has a very distinct sound. So we can very easily differentiate which instrument is which. And so these instruments are producing complex waveforms. And this is the single biggest difference between traditional light therapy and LifeWave patches, is that the patches are informational and they utilize wavelengths of light, but they utilize complex waveforms of light when they're stimulating the skin. And this is how the patches, using light and by blending different wavelengths, are going to be able to signal the production of glutathione, signal the production of copper peptide, or whatever they're designed to do. So that might be one way of thinking about it.
I love that. I love that. And I hope everybody kind of understands that. Even, you know, when you're signaling anything in the body, I like to tell my clients it's like a phone number. You know, you just have to, you dial the phone number and you have the connection. And it's very, very specific. You can't dial 4 people at once. You have to dial one person, wait for a connection, wait for a reaction, and then we can, you know, call something else and wait for a reaction. Your patches are designed to stay on the body anywhere from 8 to 10 hours. And that's where the clinical studies ride, kind of, that's where everything is based on, the clinical studies, 8 to 10 hours. I think it's important that people on the call understand if you can't wear it a full 12 hours, you're not getting benefit. We're just saying up to 12 hours is the suggested usage, and anywhere between 8 and 12 is where the results are seen. So I saw a comment about Alavita patches, and if you're only sleeping 7 hours at night, leave it on another hour, you're still going to get the maximum benefit. So to wrap up, we talk a lot about the two big patches would be X39 and Alavita. And then would you say Eon, or would you say glutathione?
I would say Eon for sure. Yeah, when we look at any type of species that has extraordinarily long life, the one thing that you see is that there's no oxidative or inflammatory stress. In mollusks, for example, that have been found that live to be over 500 years old, they still look very young and healthy. And it's because of there's no oxidative or inflammatory stress. So the ability to reset the cells to a younger, healthier state and control oxidative and inflammatory stress should not be underestimated. So those three patches I would definitely put at the top.
And then I mean, quite honestly, but I overdo everything. I have every single patch there is. So it's not,
I know how you feel.
Like you don't find a patch somewhere on me, but I will say that glutathione, I think, is absolutely, and if any of you are kind of like closet sugar eaters or wine drinkers, you need to incorporate that carnosine patch, because that's really going to help, you know, hide any type of, you know, aging, as well as lengthen your telomere. And it's so important. And I'm getting lots of comments on my phone, like, you know, this is way too much. I know it seems like a lot, everyone, but I promise you, the more you listen and the more webinars you sit on, and the more you start to use this and have your own anecdotal evidence, then you will begin to really understand the value of these patches and how far in the future this really is. It's almost kind of like we're the Jetsons now, like we're not eating, we're just patching and getting our nutrients. But I want to thank you. I'm sure I will be asked to do a sequel with you. I truly appreciate your time and your explanations. I'm going to see if anyone has sent me any other questions.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. It's a pleasure for me too, and I'm always happy to come back. Been a pleasure to speak with you, and this is a really interesting take on the use of the patches, and I think it's a great opportunity to promote the idea that we want to improve the look and the appearance of the skin by improving the overall health of the body, and people can really have both. So, you know, I think historically, many people will think in terms of, hey, I want to have great looking skin. I don't want to have wrinkles. And, you know, the approach that we're taking is, hey, let's improve your health and improve the health of the skin. And then in addition to having a great appearance, you're going to have wonderful health and better longevity, and also protect people from disease in the process. So I'm glad that we had the opportunity to address it this way.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And we'll just all be friends when we're 1,002.
There we go. Sounds like a plan.
Well, thank you so much, David, for this incredible webinar. Thank you, Jane, for your expertise. And everyone, I know this is a very, very in-depth interview. It was designed for the beauty industry and the estheticians, so it's very formal. But we do keep everything very simple, as you know how we do things here. So if everyone, Jane will be also hosting some few YouTube videos very soon to explain how each patch does too, also in her ways too. Okay, so that'll be coming up. Everyone, unmute yourself. Let's give David a really warm round of applause. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everyone, have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend.
Great weekend.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
All
Thank
250
you.
of us say thank you to
Thank you,
David.
David.
Thank you, David.